and also for the time. And maybe we can jump directly into the last video talk about and comes from Carlo Bozzoli, the CIO of Enel. The talk is about the sustainable coding at Enel. Enel, of course, is a leader power company. It is the biggest Italian company state-owned. It has 55% of the business made out of Italy and 45% made inside our territory. Enel has 60,000 of people employed and generates 22 billion of euros in revenues. So from Rome, maybe we can play the video about Carlo.
After this video, we will have a final surprise for our people, our participants.
Okay.
We will play the trailer. So now we are in the hands of Arturo.
Good afternoon, all. Having made this introduction, at Enel we devised a framework based on 4 areas to start calculating this work that began many years ago, so we acted somewhat as pioneers even in 2018. We will see where we started, which was accompanied by a measurement system that we then included in our sustainability report every year. We are now on the 8th publication with the 2023 report, recently approved, where 1. How could we support and accompany a plan for profound digital transformation of the group in a comprehensive manner with measures based on the adoption and integration of the cloud, on how we effectively manage digital assets and devices within the group in a strategic way, what the essential application components of our technological map were in our operations, and what CO2 was generated by our activities, and how our people collaborated and worked diligently, including how much CO2 was released into the atmosphere by our dedicated employees and workers in carrying out their respective tasks and activities in various locations or traveling or commuting to and from the office, and which work models and strategies such as flexible schedules and remote work could have been implemented and put into practice. What happened here? Where did we start and where are we today? We started in 2018 where these 4 processes projected approximately 35,800 tons of CO2 equivalent into the atmosphere, and after 5 years we estimated that the energy, in this case the measure of energy, let's say the CO2 emitted into the atmosphere in 2023, was around 22,800 tons with a reduction of 36%. Here you can see that the cloud contributed 3%, conscious equipment management 12%, the revision of the application map, where we will also provide examples, contributed 100%, and the use of video conferencing, electric car fleets, and so on, contributed to the remaining 75%. During the same time interval, from a digital perspective, our digital intensity increased by a significant 107%. If we consider storage, the amount of data we have stored has effectively doubled in 5 years compared to what we had produced throughout our history, and at the same time we have substantially tripled, thus increased by 200%, the underlying computing capacity to keep our production processes at the state of innovation, with a reduction in the last year from 22 to 23 of a notable 14%. Here are some examples of how we can implement sustainable behaviors in the company. We will look at some examples of sustainable behaviors in the management of the individual company citizen, the individual employee. Here are 10 examples in total. I have specifically chosen 3 to discuss in detail. We are all aware that with our emails we have taken our values, supported them with market benchmarks, and with the emails one sends in a year, each person emits 135 kilos of CO2 into the atmosphere annually, which is equivalent to driving 1,000 kilometers in a combustion engine car. Therefore, pay attention to the signature, attachments, and what we include in emails. There is a difference between attaching a document and attaching a link, forwarding an email with a link, and forwarding an email with a document and an attachment. Thus, it is important to raise awareness among people about how to share content and keep emails light. The second aspect regarding online meetings is as important and of significant consideration. With online meetings alone, each employee emits an average of 16 kilos of CO2 in a year, which is equivalent to about 120 kilometers by car. Here too, how to consciously use audio and video streaming, so when to use audio, when to use video, when to use only audio, and when to use international options. We are obviously an international company operating in 40 countries, and while it's true that remote work means people don't have to travel, it's also true that if we connect 40 people in meetings where we could have been 5, that digital component still produces CO2. Here is the matter of a conscious digital adoption and in a very easily accessible way. Third example, the amount of carbon dioxide, CO2, that is typically produced and emitted by a personal computer over the course of an entire year. This is equivalent to the CO2 emitted by 3 Rome-Milan flights, which amounts to 420 kilos of CO2, and therefore applying all circular economy approaches to the devices. Based on how I use it, I don't leave it on the network. I turn it off and only keep it on when needed. I use the battery's power steering, and when it's time to dispose of it, because it has truly reached the end of its useful life, I engage in metal recovery processes, reuse of valuable components, and disposal in a circular economy manner. Therefore, I activate what is known as the second life of the device, or participate in regeneration processes because, in other contexts, the PC can be reused. These are only 3 of the 10 examples I mentioned earlier of behaviors we implemented within the company in 2018 contributed to that 36% reduction in CO2 emissions you saw earlier. In light of that, how exactly can one build a strong and enduring position of digital leadership, and what has Enel focused on? The very first aspect that has been focused on is the cloud. We were indeed the very first major European utility and one of the very first globally in 2015, nearly a decade ago, to adopt a multi-cloud model in the public video sector, thus closing 20 data centers and completely transforming our operations from 20 data centers across the world, from Russia, Romania, Greece to Italy, Spain, Portugal, and throughout South America, Central America, and North America in the industry. So we started first with a commonly referred to as cloud-first model, meaning everything pre-existing must be able to be migrated to the cloud, to a cloud-only model where everything newly developed must be inherently and exclusively produced, designed, and built to operate solely in the cloud thanks to this convergence mechanism, essentially. We migrated 50% of our computing capacity in the first year, and in the second year the project was completed in 2018, having started on January 1, 2016 and studied in 2015. Today, for several years now, approximately 5 years, we have been a 100% company with evident benefits that you can see reported on the right. 85% reduction in CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. 100% of workloads in the cloud, 99.49% application availability. We have no more service issues, no more outages, click 8760. Hours per year for 99.9, you can see how many hours of active operation there are in our applications, so without disservice, without service interruption. All data center automation today is handled by robots, providing provisioning services, dynamic allocation in Logica Pay per user, and resources, thus enabling right-sizing, upscaling, and downscaling of computing capacity in a flexible and dynamic manner. In fact, we have built a series of new professional families within our operations that manage our infrastructure from a technical, operational, and economic perspective. So, in fact, it's essentially as if we have literally moved the computing power and storage outside the company's entrance and brought our brain back home to manage the entire infrastructure and the necessary computing and storage capacity more efficiently. At the same time, unit prices have decreased by 66%, and we have doubled and tripled the computing capacity and doubled the storage. Here is another provocative summary. Keep in mind that this is a simplification because it's not possible to put applications on the slide. In 2018, there were about 1,800 applications, and today there are 1,300, but with technological dispersion. This is the before and this is today. How much we have simplified, how much we have reduced the technological and know-how dispersion of our application part, and how much efficiency and concentration of know-how, and thus the recovery of productivity, has the technological optimization brought us, the optimization of our software, our licenses, from hundreds of technologies to a few dozen technologies, with a 25% reduction in the number of applications in the different business areas in which we operate. Another aspect, how have we changed the way we produce code in various ways over the years and methodologies in our development processes?
Just a moment, Carlo. I want to stop you on this point. Then we'll talk about the production of code, if there were any questions about the things you've said so far. In the meantime, I think it is a pleasant surprise for many to recognize them, which is the largest, essentially public power company in the world. And this last slide is absolutely, undoubtedly, and remarkably impressive indeed. I wonder if integrating in this way from thousands to just a few dozen has essentially the same impact. The necessary platforms for doing your work may have also provided an attraction capacity for acquisitions and mergers, which is of little interest to public administration because no municipality needs to buy another. CSI Piemonte, for example, may be of great interest due to its offerings. That is, if I present myself like this, instead of with the previous slide, to a potential buyer, I think I have a very powerful leverage. Then there's another question, but I would like the answer to this one first.
Absolutely yes, in the sense that you should keep in mind that when I proposed to the board of directors in 2015 that we would move everything to the cloud within a year and a half or two, and where 50% is evident, the first 50% we completed in 9 months from September 2015 to May 2016. Everyone looked at me and said, well, you'll never make it, will be impossible, but we did it. I remember perfectly that board meeting. The people sitting there, their eyes, their faces, and the things they said, and the things that accompanied that discussion. Just as I remember the previous month when I was appointed to this role of Global CIO of Enel on August 2nd, 2014, and gathered all the managers of my department to present the strategic plan for the first 100 days, one of which was this project. I'll spare you the looks on the faces of the people in the room. But why am I telling you this? Because it may seem marginal to you, but it is not marginal at all. When you undertake transformations and initiatives of this kind, you need to unleash energy and give voice to what you already have within the company to revitalize it and extract the best from it. I consider myself very lucky because over the years I have had leaders who were willing to bet on the ideas and innovative proposals I brought forward. I have always sought out CEOs or directors before becoming one myself, because this is not a job we did with suppliers alone. Yes, suppliers helped us, but if the decision makers of the company, the board, the CEO, and those who work with me hadn't first embraced it with passion, motivation, and shared the project, these transformations wouldn't happen at headquarters. I am talking about a very complex company with 60,000 people operating in 40 countries, certainly. Therefore, doing something like this involves many complexities when transitioning from a decision made in a board meeting to actually implementing the project. And if people do not embrace it in the sense that they feel it as their own and realize themselves as professionals and as individuals to do something so complex, something that no one has ever done before, challenging, in which they find their professional fulfillment. Why am I telling you this? Because it connects to another aspect, the second aspect of the question, which is how appealing it is. Look, there's something even more appealing. Yes, it's true that an application map that's so rational, so clean, so, how should I say, streamlined and optimized is appealing. But you know what? When I reached this position 10 years ago, I was indeed leading a department of 1,600 specialists. Today I lead a department of 3,000 people. No one used to leave, or rather, once you joined Enel, you stayed until retirement. What does it mean? One could certainly have an entire career at Enel with extremely little PID or interest in competing in the IT professional skills market, despite having top-notch professionals within the company. In the last 10 years, over the past decade, we have expanded our team to 3,000, but I have had the fortune, necessity, and opportunity to hire 1,722 people in total. Did you know that in the last 3 years I have lost 500 of them? And of these 500 that I lost, 390 had been around for no more than 5 years.
This is what happens to those who become leaders in the market.
And they went to work simultaneously in both the supply market and the demand market. That is, they went to work at Amazon, in banks, and in other companies that wanted to do what we have done. Well, I definitely prefer today's much better scenario to the one I found. So how very active am I? How extremely attractive am I? How much brand employment can I indeed generate? How much can people speak well of how great, potentially great, interesting, enriching, or professional it is to work on these types of aspects which contribute to the company's value?
Technology is a derivative of what we have done over the years, the energetic act of the cloud, which is a complex and dynamic system, because even a cloud, despite its seemingly benign nature, can consume resources and have a significant carbon footprint on the environment. Do you have a specific cloud in-house that you exactly control in terms of parameters? Or do you find it on the market and impose conditions?
We use a public cloud service, so we are on Microsoft Azure and Amazon. From the beginning, we have imposed on our cloud providers, both those offering IaaS services, such as computing capacity and storage, and those offering SaaS, like the Possess packages for ServiceNow that we use for Office and so on. From the cloud to the vendors directly, we require certification of the energy supply chain in line with the SDGs and green certification. Therefore, we only purchase from cloud providers that source from renewable energies and a certified supply chain. But this applies to all materials, all services, and the entire supplier ecosystem we use, not just in the cloud domain, precisely to also reduce CO2 targets, SCOP2 and SCOP3, not only SECOP1, which is derived from our production processes.
In the next lesson, we will talk about our sustainability reports, in the sustainability reports, or rather in the integrated reports. And then there are these things, because the key is obviously the scope you use. If you stop at the doorstep, you go to C. A question from Nicola Bonotto, with whom you have already been in contact.
Yes, good morning, Carlo. Hello, and Nicola Bonotto from Piano D. I just wanted to ask you for some more detailed information about this information on cloud computing. Do you already apply carbon-aware computing principles, that is, the allocation of cloud server resources where it is most useful, meaning where there is more renewable energy production at that moment? It is a technique that has only recently started to appear, but essentially allows for the optimization of renewable energy based on where it is being produced at that moment. Translated, it means if I have a script that is very resource intensive, running at night in the United States, consuming a lot of energy, if I move that script to Europe where I have renewable energy and run it in the morning and thus at night on the other side it does the same work but consumes less.
Thank you. A very interesting and indeed cutting-edge question, of course. We have a rather complex technological footprint, which makes it easy because we are already accustomed to this dynamic. However, moving workflows from one data center to another is one thing, and doing it with application maps of a certain complexity is one thing, while doing it with much simpler application maps or microservices or Dockers is much, much easier. But in general, yes, what have we already done for several years? One indeed. Many cloud providers with whom we have contracts have reciprocity agreements where we are the green energy supplier. So on one hand, you buy cloud services, and on the other, they provide you with certified green energy because I produce it and sell it to you. For many data centers, we are the energy provider, the energy supplier. We have made several flexibility and integrated production contracts in the United States with major companies such as Amazon and Microsoft. These contracts are specifically designed to enhance the efficiency and sustainability of energy usage. In these agreements, we strategically combine renewable energy production plants with advanced battery systems and comprehensive storage solutions. This integration allows us to make energy consumption and production more flexible and optimized during both peak and off-peak hours, ensuring that energy is used in the most efficient manner possible. By implementing these measures, we aim to significantly reduce the economic server costs associated with energy consumption. Additionally, we ensure at the source that the energy used to power this setup is green, thereby supporting environmental sustainability. This collaboration with Amazon and Microsoft not only underscores the importance of innovative energy management solutions, but also highlights our commitment to promoting sustainable practices in the energy sector. Then there is a third aspect related to the one you mentioned that I have defined as the concept of reuse, that is, how I produce sustainable software. However, I don't want to spoil the topics because it's one of the elements of the second part of my presentation.
Yes, and please continue with that. Pardon us for so many questions, but it seemed important to me.
It is a very interesting question and obviously not very easy to implement when talking about very complex companies where the workloads to be moved is the application map and the integration areas are very intricate with ours, but we are monitoring it and experimenting with it.
Okay, let's just get back to your presentation. Thank you.
So the last two concepts that I really want to share with you: platformization. We were used to operating in the years from the period of approximately 2015 to 2021 in a manner similar to like some kind of functional silos, in the sense that we had those 4 business divisions and then an organizational model called Digital Hub within the division under my supervision, which from start to finish handled the demand to the deployment of applications, managed and evolved the application map, thus covering demand, use case, functional specification, technical specification, coding, testing, deployment, and maintenance. Thus, all governance was vertically integrated for commodities, the market, generation, and other elements, and so on. At a certain point in time, the concept of platformization, which refers to the strategic approach of creating a unified and integrated digital platform, began to take hold and gain significant traction in the utilities sector. This was particularly evident in the development and implementation of application maps, which are comprehensive visual representations of the various software applications and their interactions within an organization, with a strong focus on the principles of circularity, which emphasize the importance of reusing resources and minimizing waste, and the goal of reducing overall consumption. We considered conducting a thorough analysis of our existing software systems and the underlying code. By embracing advanced digitalization, which involves the integration of digital technologies into all areas of business, we aim to transform our company from being primarily asset-driven to becoming more of a software-first company, where software development and innovation are at the forefront of our business strategy. More and more our processes, our business continuity, our competition in different markets, and our asset management will be based on software objects, on intangible objects. So if tomorrow software becomes the absolutely critical link, the important link, the winning link, the decisive link in our competitive capability, whether in effectively managing assets, be they production plants, distribution networks, or digital channels with our customers, then we will increasingly depend on the performance, consumption, and cost of these material assets, namely digital platforms and software platforms. But how is our software made? What quality does it have? How could we categorize it? What level of standardization does it have? Consider that we, given the complexity of our hundreds of processes, do not find an answer in defining our application map, solely with open source products. Market. But we imagine that in millions of lines of code and the thousands of software products we use divided 50-50, it covers various needs with market products, with so-called on-the-shelf software and internal code development. Now we have taken the millions of artifacts and thus billions of lines of code that make up the millions of artifacts, then numerous sources of our make application map that is essentially created, and by analyzing this source code, we have seen that 70% of each artifact does the same things in each of the programs. What does it mean that it does the same things? And it manages an interface, manages messaging, manages data access methods, manages authentication criteria, and so on. And it manages a catalog, which today we have cataloged into about 250 common services. So every development group, every competence center that starts developing a new artifact in Make Logic, that is, using a platform, a market software, starts from scratch with a blank sheet and writes, dedicating 70% of its effort and resources to writing something that already exists in thousands of versions, because hundreds of groups before them over the years have used the same type of approach. And we said to ourselves, very well, but if this and only 30-35% of the code performs tasks that are specific to the interface for which that container was designed and is meant to fulfill. He said if we standardized as if we were a software house by building a unit that over time parameterizes and thus standardizes and modularizes 150 services with 250 products, every time one starts, they define a development template within which there is a repository of objects. Any developer starting to develop a feature finds 70% of the software predefined and only needs to produce the characteristic 30-35%. But what benefits would we obtain? And if we made this a unified practice to manage how sustainable software can be produced, what kind of benefits would it bring to the system? And if this practice were used in the industry in which we operate or among the stakeholders, what effects would it have? And from this idea, first an internal project was born, followed by a second part of activities that I am going to discuss with you, which is a reference practice that we expect to become a UNISO standard. What concept do I want to convey? In a large company like Enel, this has brought significant and substantial benefits in terms of the reuse of code, concentration of know-how and expertise, and the quality and efficiency of resource utilization. Well-written software managed with a product logic is more secure and safer, more standardized, and more maintainable and adaptable, which means it costs less to evolve over time and, most importantly, is highly reusable.